The following program is a personal scrapbook, strictly for memories. It is not meant to be used commercially.
Hi James, this is Victor. I am calling to inform you that the world is going to self-destruct in a matter of minutes.
Intro is Love's Theme by Love's Unlimited Orchestra, written by Barry White. That's right.
So normally there'd be an opening poem. I don't have a true opening poem in me, but I do have this thing that I found. It's a thread of Tumblr posts. So I'm just going to read these for you. There was a young man from Peru whose limericks stopped at line 2. There once was a man from Verdun. There once was a man from the sticks whose limericks stopped at line 6. They were fine till line 5, then they took quite a dive. But the problem is easy to fix. If you just ignore the last line, it doesn't even follow the rhyme scheme. Oh God, I've really lost control of this thing. I'm so sorry. There once was a man from Cork who got limericks and haiku confused. There once was a man from the sticks who liked to compose limericks, but he failed at the sport because he wrote them too short. There once was a fellow named Dan whose poetry never would scan. When told this was so, he replied, "Yes, I know. It's because I tried to squeeze as many syllables into the last line as I possibly can." And hello, everyone, and welcome to Two Idiots Peddling Poetry at the Ugly Mug. That was Random People on Tumblr for 2023.
That's pretty brilliant.
Tonight we have for you Victor Infante with his new book, the title of which I don't recall off the top of my head.
Suffer for this.
Suffer for this. Wow, what a appropriate title. Damn. Also with a mini feature from Leah Deshane.
Yeah.
Victor D. Infante is the author of the poetic novella Suffer for This from Moontide Press. New, available here. And the poetry collection City of Insomnia from Right Bloody Publishing. There may be some copies. There are. He is the features editor for the Worcester Telegram and Gazette and the editor for Worcester Magazine. For those of you who do not know him, he used to be part of the Orange County poetry scene back when Steve and I started. And he and like Ellen was maybe 3, I'm not sure. The worst things I ever did was ask her how old she was when the reading started. Don't say it again. Anyway, and Victor was kind of like I've been saying like the godfather of the Orange County poetry scene. Just like he knew everything that was going on, and he had wonderful advice. And I consider him one of my primary mentors for what this reading is and how it operates. And it's always a pleasure to have him here, and especially with a brand new book. Please welcome Victor Infante to the stage.
Woo! Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everybody. 2 things really quick before I start. One, my wife is a better poet than I am, and I will fully admit this. And she has her White Bloody book over there too, so if you want that. And I could have done the grand premiere of this book pretty much anywhere in the country if I wanted to, but there was only one reading that immediately came to mind, and it was 3,000 miles away from where I was living. And with a little help from my mother and a lot of other people and Eric Morago at Moontide, this gets to be the very first reading for Suffer for This. Love, sex, marriage, and rock and roll. More about it later, but I would just like to note that this is indeed a work of fiction. One, because nothing happened. Because nothing happened. We find suffering in the inflection of a word, the way we wrap our tongue around a syllable. Love, we say, when we mean love. When we mean 1,000 pulses of blood, 1,000 firing synapses, when we mean the endorphin rush of a first kiss that leaves us stoned and breathless, staggering alone from her driveway to your car, or when you see a woman across a crowded coffee house and know that you will have her. Love as clairvoyance, watching the origami of the future unfold until you are drunk, teeth clenched on her lip, until time falls forward again and you are empty in a parking lot, reading the broken lines of your own palm for some future that ends anywhere but there, and finding none. Finding only inevitability, heartbreak, and want. We say love, but eschew definition, as though it were some mason jar to store in a cupboard. Is love that blush of silence that overwhelmed you in junior high school? The way her smile still jars when you see it on some social networking site online? Is love the way a teenage girl's voice haunted you when you left for college? The memory of a kiss in a park, children laughing in the distance as they slid and swung, oblivious to the finality both of you saw and reflected in each other's eyes, looming deadline of distance, absence, and blood which would inevitably boil elsewhere. Is love the picture you keep in a box in the attic, the one you haven't unearthed in years, but which you think about sometimes on quiet nights when your wife sleeps soundly and you have memorized the details of the ceiling? I say all of this is love, and more, and less. I say love is the fact of a person, the way she burns herself into the architecture of your life. Love is what is both inevitable and durable, what burns and heals and batters against your forehead and chest. Love is the voice that will hush all others, each pretender, every demon. And love is also none of this, but is instead the combination of every love which has preceded it, mistake layered upon mistake, calculus of what the body needs and what the self no longer wishes to be, the attempt to rectify each fated mistake, to reclaim each ghost of what was right without the reckoning and fall. This is love as we are now, this particular inflection of us. And still, the voices twitter in the distance, and still, there's a burning at the base of our skull. I have no bio,
But she's one of my dearest friends that I've known the entire time I've been in the poetry community, pretty much. And she's wonderful and amazing, and you're going to love her if you don't already. Please welcome Leah Deshane.
Alienating my audience before we even begin. Shining boxcars spill from the train yard to collect the inconvenient for incineration. The first-class passengers ask the burning to keep their screams down, for Christ's sakes. Don't you know what time it is? Can't you just behave? How rude. Someone sets fire to the rail house, but the conductors only add to the score. It's already too late. The engines overheat. The iron tracks slouch and run like butter. Structure fails. Ash down to the filter. Somewhere an emperor rosins his bow. No fawns shelter in a nest of leaves. No glib sunset promises rain. Press this wasp nest poultice to your bleeding heart and hold it close while we witness what remains. No one is excused from the bloody struggle towards kindness. Hope is entirely optional.
Adapting to read. You can tell this is the first time I've read some of this stuff out of a book.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff has not actually been read in public at all. So, and this will be it. Some of it has in like older versions, but this is all very new for me today. So we're in like new territory. It's awesome.
You're guinea pigs.
You are my guinea pigs. This is my lab. 2. Mostly, my wife and I tell the story like this. We were at a music festival in a city where neither of us lived, in a crowd in front of an amphitheater. I told a joke. She was the only one who laughed. And that story's true as far as it goes, but it's not precisely where it started. Not really. Merely a prologue, a recognition of shared perspective, a laugh in a crowd. It wasn't a loud laugh, but it had cut across the din, and when I turned to find its origin, I saw her on the steps above me, a tiny woman with Muppet orange hair, glasses, and a Tori Amos concert t-shirt, smiling, amused. Sometimes, in private, or with friends she doesn't mind scandalizing, the story extends further, with us in a hotel room, drinking Schlitz because it was all we could afford, talking music and poetry, politics and religion, until familiar night falls on the unfamiliar city, and we're kissing on the edge of a rented bed and fucking in the bathroom in case the friends she traveled with returned. What passes for discretion in youth. This serious business of marriage, it started with a joke. She was the only one who laughed. I'd just finished dating a magician's assistant. She would vanish in a flurry of confusion and sleight of hand. My wife had been dating a ninja. He would cut and disappear. Both had a talent for shadows and silence. We were both off balance. We both wanted nothing more than to vanish into music for a while. It started with a joke. It wasn't particularly funny. Neither of us were skilled at disappearing. She had a boy orbiting her shyly. I met him briefly in a bar and liked him well enough. Another woman and I were circling each other cautiously, kissing like thieves, navigating 1,000 differences which blood was boiling to overcome. Blood is a stupid thing. It wants what it wants. Everything about her was straight razor beautiful, even her smile, which could slice the skin off your cheek. One touch of her hand and I bled, but I was preoccupied with my empty wallet, my sputtering duct tape car, my shabby bed in a rented room. She was nothing but kind, but I was frightened of the poverty in me, the way her beauty cast my failures into stark relief, and still she consumed my thoughts for days, boiled my blood until I made an awful joke and only heard one laugh reply. And then, callously, that boiling was gone. It started with a joke. It started with the frantic, careless sex of young strangers in an unfamiliar city. It started with amnesia of pulse, erasing everything that came before it, reducing each incarnation of love I'd known before to failed photographs stored in a box in the attic of my heart. In the course of a day, she became an unshakable fact, and I was overwhelmed by the thought of losing her, of awakening to the negative space of her, to an absence which I knew to my marrow I'd eventually collapse into without her. Blood is a stupid thing, but it has its truths. She was a truth. And I crumbled before her and cried, confessed every failing and heartbreak, was the honest wretch of myself for perhaps the first time ever, and she touched my cheek and said nothing, and that is where our marriage began, in the absence of fear, in inexplicable trust, in a weeping beauty I'd never believed possible. It started with a joke, it's true, but I've never known anything more serious.
I spent a lot of time just not writing because all I wanted to do was go, ah! So this was kind of what came out of that once I could make it words. All of it. You, born of cave wall and warpath, you predator bristling out its fur, you, the atomic spotlight and oil slick, you, the plague and algorithmic vector. You Broadembagnian army whose red prints cover Lilliput. You todular ululation of weaponized impatience. You bumstop raptor. You dysregulated cave-in. You shameless steel wire cage of a mother. You travel like cancer and to the same effect. You rent our own faces back to us with interest. You shame us for what you say we made you do. You test net worth, not value. You award our grade school bullies golden badges. You farm fear, and now here's your harvest. You wake us up at night to steal our sleep. You make us run behind your car and say you've won the race. We love you like Stockholm, like editors, like Dresden maids in 1945, like cellists who rosin unrequited bows amongst the rubble. Let us love you with this pillow, this needle, this air bubble formed in your carotid. Let us sing you to sleep with our long list of departed and hold your hand until it finally relaxes from its fist. Let us brush your eyes closed gently with a velvet shroud. Let us pin you in your coffin with a heartwood bouquet. Let us survive you long enough to live.
We're going to skip ahead. So this book has had a very long journey, 12 years, in fact, to be precise, which I never thought I'd spend that long writing anything in my life. I don't even remember who said it originally, but somebody online, or some essay I was reading, was saying nobody wants to read a story about a happy marriage. And I said, I'll take that bet. Because what we forget when we're talking about any love story, any marriage of any sort, is the people involved have not always been the people they are now. If you're very lucky, you've changed. If you're the same person you were 20 years previously, there's probably something wrong. Beyond that. And if you're lucky, you change together. And the other thing is, your heart doesn't stop just because you're in love. You are still a person. So I wanted to try to do sort of the opposite of what most of these stories do. And maybe it worked. I don't know. We'll find out. You'll be the judge. 28. Nothing happened. We say this as though it were a final statement, as though the words had some palpable meaning, as if there is no truth in the proximity of bodies. It means we didn't kiss, or we didn't fuck, or there was nothing between us but suspended breath and hands paralyzed with fear. How do you solve for the value of nothing? Is there some algebra that eliminates the variables of when she turns and her dress swishes, and for a moment you are somewhere else entirely? When you and she are alone in an elevator discussing stock projections or television shows, in your mind's eye you see possibilities unfold, when you wonder silently if she is calculating the weight of nothing too. There are entire novels in the tilt of the pelvis as the mind considers and rejects 1,000 tiny sparks Nothing, we say, but that word does not exist in the diction of our blood. We want and are horrified by want. Shove it down out of sight. Let it rattle in the confines of our bones. Cacophony that drowns out everything else. That we succumb to the screaming is nothing remarkable. What's amazing is that we often don't.
If you've ever had a relationship in which, for some reason, nothing you say is taken the right way, this is my poem for that. What we have here is a failure to communicate. I'm lost. Can you give me directives? No one wants trouble with the law of gravity. I broke down on someone's shoulder in a no parsing zone, just past the end constriction in the rest arena. I never even intended to be near, but it's laugh or cry over spilled milk, smile, and the world creates similes with you. All the world's enraged, and we are but its strayers. Still, everything that rises must converse. So, how aren't you? How's the strife and mids? Do you have a phone I can lose? Do you think I'll rain today? Well, I'm here. Can I get a pack of smoke signals? Can I get change for a holler? Can you break this tense into a roll of corals? Do you know the way back to my way? I seem. You can't get there from hereafter. The yellow zone is for coding and uncoding only. You're clothed for business, it's last brawl, and you don't dare where I go, but I can't keep you at bay here. Is there anywhere nearby to eat crow? I'd settle for a black coffin and a side of hash marks. I could murder a curry for favor. I'm vanished. Any hole in the gall piner will do. It's been grating, but I've got to run my stockings. I've got to get back Rome to free the dog and bring in the hail. So nice to catch cold. I'll be you soon. Have a great day. This face left intentionally blank.
32. This wreckage is what I've carried with me all this time. The rubble and splinters of the crumbled edifice I built to shield myself against what? I don't know. Maybe I built it as a child, the first stone laying when my father died, and then another at the first taunts of schoolyard bullies, and perhaps another when I first presented a card for subsidized school meals, the first weight of poverty. Maybe it was there from the start, branded in my DNA. I don't know. I only know it had always been there. These walls between myself and everyone else. And this is how I tried to love amid the rubble, heart eroding like sandstone, drifting in the breeze, settling on someone's skin, extended fingers only touching stone, skin calcified where my insides dissolved, a well-defined statue, art critics would say. But it has no soul. And even the carapace was flawed. One touch could reduce it to rubble, and I knew this, I think, which is why I avoided being touched in any real way, just drifted in the breeze from body to body, thinking only of myself, trying to forget myself, trying to assuage the omnipresent want while always dimly aware of a fear of breaking, although something, somewhere, desperately needed to break. The woman who would become my wife cracked my shell with a single touch of my cheek, and all of the dust and rubble littered the carpet, the empty space inside replaced by love, and it is that love that binds me together, which keeps me from dissipating into air.
Based on actual events. Get a blowjob from a student. Write your third best-selling midlife crisis to critical acclaim as she drops out. Fuck the nanny over the wet ink on her first paycheck. Churn out another manic pixie dream script. Wrestle the co-ed on the bed for the bong. Write an epic poem about fleeting youth. Take a wife. Take another. Each younger than the last. Keep your superficial charm whetted against their inexperience and watch them learn and leave. Say they were after your money. Look sadly into distance. Hinted mental illness. There are many insufficiencies. Pat the next one on the head until her turn. Bemoan your empty, empty heart. How all that unearned power cannot fill it. How we don't love you enough, no matter how many scraps you scatter. How progress and time wound you. How every hard-fought boundary spells betrayal. Wail of our colossal misunderstanding. You don't remember threatening to rape the girl at the conference. You didn't even follow through that time. How could it count? It doesn't count if you erase the marks with prestige. She mistakenly believes herself a person. Really, it was a favor to notice her at all, the greedy bitch. Your adherents rise like dragon's teeth to tear her. The canon upholds you. The industry rakes in the falling cash of controversy. Her stories rarely see print. Tell me one more time how I'm supposed to separate the author from the work. Saying nothing is lost to these expensive lessons in censure and silence. Say feet of clay and cash another check. Lean back into the awful machinery that made you. Leave me my paltry handful of sand, my bitter fruit from forbidden trees, my indelible granite you have failed to erode to dust.
There's a very strange narrative in here. It's very weird because when you write something that's basically a work of fiction, it's a narrative. It goes from one place to the other. Poems you can read in pretty much any order for whatever effect you want to create in that night. Narrative kind of controls the order you read things, so you're skipping ahead at various points. It's a very new experience. This is 36. The cinema tells us there's a narrative arc to dating when you're young. Meet cute, run into each other one or two more times, and ask her out, go out 2 or 3 times, sleep together, become an item. From there, it either runs its course or you get married, depending on the sort of film you're watching. It almost never worked like that for me. In all honesty, during and right after college, I either ended up in bed with a woman on the first date or there wasn't a second. There never seemed to be any in between, not for lack of trying. I took one woman to a concert where we danced to Foghat all night. She kissed me goodnight on her doorstep and I thought all was fine, but she was never interested in going out again. Or another woman, whom I'd long been lightly acquainted with, went with me to the movies and then to a party where we made out on the porch all night, but she was never interested in a second date either. I assumed it had something to do with me. Perhaps they could perceive the wreckage that surrounded me, warning lights flashing, don't get too close, or maybe it had nothing to do with me at all. They were in the midst of their own stories, after all, and not just bit players in mine. Sometimes, with the protective layers of marriage and decades between us, I'm tempted to track them down and ask what happened, but I don't know where to begin that conversation. Some I don't know how to find or even entirely remember their names, and the rest are now casual connections on Facebook and Twitter, faces I see flip by on my computer screen, along with status updates about their marriages and children, about their jobs and scores on Wordle. Is there any way to look back and ask, what happened? Why didn't we work? Is there any way to breach that conversation without the appearance of wanting to rekindle something? Because really, I don't. I've already seen how those movies end. Perhaps it's best not to stage an autopsy of history, to dissect the details of small failings. And what if they did tell you, and there were apologies owed? Could I face long dormant culpability, a blame I never realized existed? This phantom looms larger than any sin I could have possibly unwittingly committed, begging questions. What are you afraid of? How can you feel guilty for things you don't remember, things which may have never happened? Why is it best to not disturb the graves of stillborn love?
Revisionary. When a car breaks down in noon desert, monotonous sand spins fantastic landscapes. Grains of flat land pretending to depth as the eyes lose focus. Blue swallows the end of the road, changing the letters of the street signs. Clouds become faces and fade. I drove on sky until the wild glance severed my impossible suspension. The clouds turned ugly and screamed at me all the way down. Years after, my pen held its breath until the black ink turned blue, until my veins ran thin with it, grasping at straws, still falling. I was out of character witness, map-scale legend for Heartland, service engine light bulb set against a late January windshield frost, bonfire of verities. Now, behold this ash cryptogram turned war paint, rekindled ember, subtlest splinter under the skin. This is all part of the itinerary, the prolific and profligate, the sunrise and shame, given no mercy, none remains for long discarded drafts. I never write anything without revising. This version cuts to the chase, asks no forgiveness. This version carries a knife in its teeth and smiles Cheshire, calls Caterpillar, asks, "Who are you?" This is called Everywhere is Anglass. Phone batteries run on lithium and bloodshed. The weather forecasts flood and famine. The open earth screams under Roundup, asphalt, and oil. The garden invades the wood, chokes the fence with bittersweet. The buildings invade where the garden cannot, and coyotes choke on the trash by the curb. Cornerstones demand sacrifice, and we have built so many that to sacrifice grow their own dark cities now. A predatory recursion, suffering all the way down. There is no absolution. There can be no absolution beyond the stitches you unpick from the seams of your mouth, the freedom you unravel from that rotten cloth.
I fear I've left most of the drama out of the novel here. So we're going to leave you with this. And with, again, a reminder that this is indeed a work of fiction. 65. Love listens. And this is how you love a woman who is not your wife. Distracted by background noise, garbled and static, power ballad at the bottom of the radio dial, you love in grace notes, filling space you never knew existed. And this is how you love your wife when you also love another woman. Favorite song turned unfamiliar, shifting time signatures, melody transposed from piano to guitar. She is signal. She is always signal. But there are parts you must relearn. These loves aspire to harmony and counterpoint. Played true, nothing clashes. Only dishonesty brings dissonance, but alas, that comes easily. You fall out of key, your hands fumble, and you lose the beat. You repeat a verse, turn, and you're a record skipping. Your hands reach for chords you barely remember. Sometimes they connect softly with a shudder, with whispered prayers, and sometimes they hit sloppily and flat, taking you out of the song entirely, and worse, you hit every note correctly, then look to see your fingers bleeding. You listen to your heart, as they say, but its percussion pounds too fast and echoes across an empty chamber. Your heart is an idiot and can't help you. It simply wants to thrash until it falls exhausted. It's all exhausting. You fiddle with balance, more bass, more treble, and for a moment you have it perfect and it's beautiful and clear. For a moment you are breathless and at peace, but it passes too soon. The song unravels. You try to gather up the strands, but they're dissolved. You start again. You try to love a woman who is not your wife, and you try to love your wife when you're in love with another woman, and you force yourself to wonder if you're actually listening to either and not just your own blood. You hear the ghost of a symphony, but composing it is beyond you. You end up standing still in silence. Thank you very much. I'll be over here. We've got copies of this, brand new plus copies of those lines available.